everything. Everybody what? Ready? Okay.
No. She would say she's forever forgetful.
Okay, it is 5 o'clock. Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Let's see, I think I saw Lydia earlier. Maybe we should give her a few minutes to get here. Is that okay?
She's here in person?
Lydia was downstairs coming up.
Yeah, I saw her. There you go. Okay.
I guess I have to move my crutch.
We wait for you, Lydia.
Thank you.
We're gonna tell her new.
I'm running.
Okay. All right. So this is Finance, Economic Development, and Regional Affair meeting. And my name is Huang Tran, for the record. On my right is Council Member Paul McDaniel, committee member, and also Council Member Susan Honda. On my left, another member of the committee, Jack Dovey. And then we have Council President Linda Kochma, Council Member Jack Walsh, and Lydia, Council Member. Welcome. All right. Do we have any public comments?
We have no public comments.
No public comments. Thank you. We are moving to committee business. The first item is approval of summary minutes for May 2024.
I make a motion to approve summary minutes for May 2024.
I'll second that.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the summary minutes of May 2024. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Matter passed 3-0. Thank you. We are moving on to item B, abatement of 2647 South Star Lake Road. Curtis, welcome.
Good evening, Chair Tran, council members that are present. My name is Curtis Richards, and I'm a code compliance officer with the City of Federal Way. I'm here to request approval to abate 2647 South Star Lake Road in the City of Federal Way. The policy question is, should City Council approve abating the property located at 2647 South Star Lake Road, Federal Way, Washington, 98003, in the amount of $30,859.53? This property has a long history of documented code violations dating back to 2008. The owner is non-responsive, and the property continues to be in violation of city code. The notice of violation in order to correct was posted April 11th, 2024. These pictures were taken May 6th, 2024 with the SOU officers from a site visit. We went out for a public RFP on this project. We received 9 bids, 6 were before the deadline, and 3 came in after the deadline and were not included. The cost breakdown for the project is $5,605 in biohazard labor, $7,967 in dump fees, $876 in supplies, $100 for sharps disposal, $3,294 for rental equipment, $670 for the junk car removal, $195 for hazardous waste disposal, $1,908.11 for Washington State sales tax. That came to a total of $20,615.11 from BioDecon Solutions, who was the winning bidder. There was a supplemental bid we received from them for the securing of the site. And that was the $4,759 plus $485.42 in sales tax. That's to add the gate and secure the easement road on the property. I am asking for an additional $5,000 as a contingency in case there is any more active dumping on the property since the bids went out and were received. That would be a grand total for approval of $30,829.53. The options to consider is to approve the proposed $30,859.53 abatement of 2647 South Star Lake Road, or do not approve the proposed abatement on the 2647 South Star Lake property and provide directions to staff.
Thank you. Paul?
Thank you.
Yeah, two quick questions. Is majority of the junk on there, is it dumping, or is it the owner just collecting?
It is dumping on that property. The owner is non-responsive and has not responded to any of my attempts to contact them.
Understood. And then the abatement, can you give me a little bit more education on what abatement is and what exactly that curtails for this?
Yeah, abatement's where we go in and clean up the property of all of the, it'll be a bunch of junk and debris on this property, abandoned vehicles, vehicle frames and car parts, and miscellaneous construction debris, concrete that's been dumped. I can go back to the pictures if you'd like.
No.
and point out some of
I
those items.
just want to get clear on that one. And then, do we classify abatements when we clean up like the homeless camps too? Is that classified as an abatement?
That is, yes.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Okay.
Councilmember Dovey?
Yeah, what are we doing to stop this? Are we gonna arrest people if we see them, or have cameras there to catch them? I mean, we're cleaning it up, but that doesn't seem like the real problem.
Yeah, so what we're doing to try to prevent this in the future is securing the easement road into the property with that gate.
I mean, do we need to pass some sort of ordinance that throws somebody in jail for dumping a car on somebody else's property? I mean, I ask that as a rhetorical question, but
Really, we have to look at something like that as a long-term solution. It would require some sort of, I feel like it's beyond code compliance's purview on how to prevent this.
and lastly, what is this property worth?
I am not sure what the assessed value is of the parcel.
So if they sell it, we would get our money back?
That is correct. We will actually bill them for the abatement afterwards, and then if they do not pay the bill, we'll then file the lien on the property.
Thank you.
Councilmember Honda and then Councilmember Jack Walsh.
Thank you. Is this the first time this has been abated?
This is the first time the city has completed the abatement on it, yes. It was previously cleaned in 2022 and 2023 by the owner and the developer of the property as we started the abatement process.
Is it the same owner still?
It is the same owner and same developer.
And why do you think they're not communicating with the city anymore? I drove by it a couple weeks ago. I mean, it's pretty bad.
I'm not sure why they're not responding. I called every phone number I could find for them. I've sent emails. I spoke with the property owner's father, asked him to have his son call me, and I've received no response.
So because this continues to be such an issue over there, and no doubt that they'll get back on the property and start up again, what can we do as a city to make sure that this just doesn't happen? I mean, can we require a fence, a fence around the property, or?
That was a condition on the NOV that we posted. They had a fence and it was since been removed.
Okay, well, thank you.
It looks like there's a couple of structures there. Are there homes being lived in, or?
So those structures were actually removed since the aerial photos were taken that you're seeing on like Google Earth. Those were removed during the last cleanup and abatement attempt back in 2022 and 2023.
Okay, so no residents there.
That is correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So before we vote on this, I want to follow up on one of the questions that Jack Dovey asked earlier regarding the potential criminal violation. I'm looking at Ryan just for his.
It is a crime to dump. I think anything over 1 cubic yard is a felony. So yes, dumping cars on someone else's property is a crime. Catching someone doing that is a different matter. But yes, it's already a crime.
So we do have the ordinance in the book right now to enforce
It's against
that.
state law.
Okay. Great.
A comment, maybe it's time that, we're gonna charge $30,000 to a property owner who may or may not be responsive, but it's, unless he's encouraging people to dump things, or he or she on their property, we're just gonna clean it up and pay for it, and maybe we should be looking at that plus some more enforcement, because this is probably not the only place this is happening. And, that's a whole nother discussion we might want to have in land use or do something in the
Yeah.
future, but, I don't know, it seems, I don't know the guy or people who have this, but it seems like we're gonna fine them $30,000 for something that they're not doing themselves. Maybe they don't have the money, they don't want to sell the property, but somebody's breaking the law and they're the victim. And they could also be part of the problem, but it just doesn't feel very good. I wouldn't like it if I was the property owner.
No, I would support that idea, so perhaps maybe we can bring it to the land use committee?
Yeah, I would like to bring it up sometime this year.
Okay, very good. Council member?
So when I drove by a couple weeks ago, it was nighttime, or like 8 o'clock at night, and there was a big bonfire and a lot of people around it. That seems like a very hazardous situation, and there's, if things start exploding or those trees go up, we've got a very dangerous situation. So could police go in at that point? They're not supposed to be on the property. They've probably been trespassed off the property, I would assume.
So the issue with the people that are out there currently is they're claiming they were given permission by the land developer to reside on the property to provide security and to prevent dumping from occurring.
Oh,
It's a failure.
and we can't prove that because the owner's not,
That is correct. The owner has not responded to any attempts to make contact, and there's nothing legally recorded showing that the developer does in fact have permissions to do that.
but still, I think a bonfire with all the cars and all the other trash, we don't know what's in the trash, and all the trees, especially now that it's summertime, is extremely serious, and it seems to me that we should have some legal recourse to, if that's happening, to get the police in there to stop it when that's happening. That just is common sense to me.
I agree it is a hazardous situation out there, which is why we do want to clean the property.
Thank you.
Several times you've referred to the owner and then developer. Is it property that's been applied for development or something? You keep saying developer.
Yes. So they applied back in 2017, I believe it was. I can check my notes on that. And then they let their application just time out, and they're not moving forward actively with that.
So what size of acreage is it?
It's approximately 4 acres.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Council member Honda?
I'm sorry,
Oh, okay.
but thanks for calling on me.
All right. Can I have a motion, please?
You want to just keep it on consent then? Okay. No, I can make the motion, I just make sure, we want to make sure it stay on consent. All right, I move to forward the proposal, abatement, and assessed agreement to the July 2nd, 2024 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
We have a motion as a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Matter passed 3-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
We are moving on to item C, Global Spectrum LP 2023 incentive fee. Autumn, welcome.
Good evening, Chair Tran, Council President Coach Mark, committee members and council members that are here this evening. Let me just pull this up really quick here. The policy question before you is, should the City Council approve the Global Spectrum LP or OVG 360 2023 incentive fee in the amount of $34,489 and authorize staff to remit payment? Background on the incentive fee is it is made up of two components, a qualitative and a quantitative component. The qualitative component, which some of those details are on the screen in front of you, includes 5 different performance metrics. These metrics include results of customer surveys, tenant-resident group relations, quality of the food and beverage services, which is also scored through some of those customer surveys, achievement of their annual event programming and attendance goals in the theater, and achievement of annual event programming and attendance goals in the event spaces. You can see here the under category number 1, which is worth a total of $2,000. They reached 93.5%, which falls within the excellent range and qualifies them for $2,000 in that category. Under tenant resident group relations, they earned $1,737.50. Quality of food and beverage services percentages earned them $1,955.56. And under annual event programming and annual event programming in event space and theater, both sections were $500 each. Under the quantitative component, this is made up, stipulates that the manager shall be paid 20% of the amount of the actual net operating income loss exceeding the net operating benchmark. There's no cap on the amount to be earned. The benchmark for 2023 was set as the transfer from the general fund subsidy, which was $1,001,021. The actual net loss for 2023 was $861,390, leaving them ahead $139,631. 20% based off the quantitative component equals $27,926. The total payment to OVG 360 Global Spectrum is $34,489. And then I will pass it off to Steve for the next one.
I don't pretend to know all the operational aspects. I just double-checked the numbers, and when I looked at the financial actual numbers that we have in our system, the actuals for 2023, the revenue minus the expense gave us a loss, and that, if you look at our fund balance, the beginning and the ending, it matches. And so when we looked at how they did budget to actual on our books, the actual revenue, the charges plus all the miscellaneous stuff, it more than exceeded budget by $568,000. And it's reasonable to assume that if you have more activity, you would have more expense. However, not as much as the revenue. So the bottom line to us, the net to our financials, is that they improved our position by $132,900, better than we budgeted. So of course, we agree that's the sort of thing you want to incentivize. That's my whole entire contribution to Autumn's presentation. And the question and answer should be for her.
I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you. Paul?
Yeah, the first thing I'd like to make is that I would prefer to have this on business agenda than consent agenda. My second one is, I understand the contract and how they're written. There's, if I understand this correctly, and I'm looking at it from out their point of view, we're paying a performance bonus because we didn't lose as much money as we projected, correct?
We're paying a performance bonus because we asked them to reduce the subsidy benchmark, and they did that. We said we budgeted $1 million, and they came in at $861,000, which they achieved that goal.
Okay, so again, like I said, the reason we're doing is because we didn't lose as much money as we had budgeted
Correct.
for. Okay, so if we lose less money, the in-between point from what we had budgeted and what they have created, for lack of a better term, is what we're paying the percentage off of?
Correct.
Okay. Now, my main concern is I'd just like to move it off to, from consent agenda to business agenda.
I'm okay with putting it
Jack?
on. Yeah, the comment I have is, I understand the contract and they perform based on the contract and therefore the bonuses are due. But there's gonna have to be a time when we have to look ourselves in the mirror and say, you know, we're incenting people to make us lose less money than we're losing. And there's gonna be a point, I don't know when, where we're gonna have to make the decision, are we in the business, is this maybe this is really a social service that we need to fund and not look at it as a business, because we would all close it tomorrow if we were writing the check out of our own pocket.
Right.
And so I agree we should have this on our business discussion. I mean, they've earned the money, we have to pay it. I think that's only fair. But I think there's a really underlying discussion is how comfortable are we losing or telling people we want to lose $860,000 this year? And thank you if you get it to lose 700,000. But I think we got a bigger discussion, not today and not on the council meeting next week, but sometime coming forward. And I appreciate the numbers because you're right on, so.
Absolutely.
Councilmember, I think you're just suggesting it should be,
And sorry for my voice, I lost it Wednesday,
so
so.
you're suggesting it should come up during the budget discussions. That's the point in time where we make that decision, it really is. Yeah.
Great, that'll be fun.
Chair.
With that, how was the benchmark set, and for 2024, is it the same benchmark, or how is the benchmark set each year?
The benchmark is set during biennium budget cycles that the council votes on. When the council votes for what their general fund subsidy would be, that sets up the next 2 years. 2024 is right about 967,000, so it's a reduction.
Okay, all right. My only other comment on the food, the quality of the food, sometimes it's very, very good, and there's been at least one time when it was terrible. I mean, tell them never to try to make Korean food there again. I mean, it's, anyway.
Thank you.
I mean, I like eating.
Yeah,
And when I leave something on my plate, especially most of it on my plate, that's a bad sign. So anyway, but most of the time, it's quite good, but.
I would invite that feedback to always be sent to the general manager over at the PAC, that in real time, so that way we can assess those situations versus down the road. But thank you, I'll make sure I relay it to her so that way she understands.
Okay, all right.
Susan?
Thank you. Do they have this agreement with all of the venues that they run in the country?
Yes. It varies depending on where they're at, and the benchmark is negotiated depending on each agreement, but they have very similar contracts and negotiations with all of their other venues, yes.
It would be interesting to see some of those that are like ours, you know, same seats, that kind of stuff.
As far as how much their incentive fee is at the end of the year?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just one comment on whether it goes on the consent agenda or the business agenda. If this is something that should really be brought up during the budget discussion, is that when it should be seriously considered, and just go ahead and put it on the consent agenda now?
I prefer to have the public know more about
Okay,
this.
all right.
Okay. Ryan, do you think we have enough time on the July 2nd meeting for this item to be added?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. Then I move to forward approval of the incentive fee and payment authorization to the July 2nd, 2024 business agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The matter will move to business agenda. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
Okay, we are moving on to item D, Washington Criminal Justice Center Commission Wellness Grant will be presented by Commander Todd Hodge.
You got a presentation, or you just?
I'm just talking.
All right.
Just my lovely voice.
All right, sounds good. There you go.
Welcome, Commander.
Welcome. Thank you, Committee Chair and Council President and the rest of council members. I am honored to once again be in front of you guys and representing the Police Department. The subject matter is the Washington Criminal Justice Training Commission Wellness Grant. The policy question is, should the city, Federal Police Department, accept or approve for the wellness grant? A little history about the wellness grant. The Police Department, Andy, the chief, and the wellness program which I run, which is a fairly new program. It's been in our process for about 6 months. And we have been doing our best to enhance the physical fitness and mental fitness of our officers. Our goal is to keep them long-term, keep them on the street, and keep them happy. This grant, which we applied for, was very specific on the things that we needed to do. They wanted us to do programs that were going to enhance the officers and their health. That being said, what we were approved for the grant was the DexaFit program, which provides a screen analysis for each officer on their body composition, fat percentage, lean body mass, bone density. They basically go in there, get scanned, and it tells them everything that's wrong with them. It also gives them recommendations on how they can strengthen their body so they're not going to end up being hurt. We're also going to purchase a reverse hyper. I don't know if you guys are familiar with reverse hyper, but it's a machine that helps strengthen your lower back. And specifically with us sitting down all the time and having our belt on, that's where we get a lot of injury. So with these two pieces of the program which have been approved to purchase, we are trying to keep officers on the street and not being injured. And that being said, are there any questions I can answer for you?
Thank you. Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. I put my son's vest, or whatever you call it, on one day, and I almost fell over, and it wasn't even completely full of stuff that police officers have to carry. So whatever it is that we can keep our officers healthy, I completely support.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate that.
My only question is, like, the reverse hyper, is that strictly going to be used by the police department, or is it for the city employees?
It's going to be stationed at the police department gym, which is off of Pacific Highway, but it's also for the civilians in the police department, and anyone has access down there, they can go use it.
Okay, thank you.
See no more questions. May I have a motion, please?
Yeah, give me 1 second. I move to forward the proposed grant acceptance and associated contract to the July 2nd, 2024 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Matter pass 3-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Item E, update of video system component for the Evident Building. Thomas, welcome.
Good evening, Chair Tran, committee and council members. Before you, I don't have a fancy presentation on this item. It's pretty straightforward. We have, the police department every year applies for the the Edward Bryan Memorial Justice Assistance Grant, AKA the JAG grant is how it's referred to internally. And every year, the council approves applying for and then receiving the funds. This was applied for out of the 2022 JAG grant. And in addition to the police bomb disposal unit tools that they are buying out of this particular grant, they've allocated $33,387 for the Safe City TV expansion at the Evidence Building. So the Evidence Building largely was built mid-2000s, shortly after we moved into this building. There are cameras still there operating from that time, which is a long life for those cameras. They're still analog. In 2011, we did add or replace a couple of those and updated them, but largely they've been in place ever since. And so there are some areas that need improvement. I do not want to go into a lot of detail about that surveillance of that building right now in a public meeting, but we'll just say that it needs improvement. And so in this particular case, we have worked with the evidence technicians over there to discuss exactly kind of what the coverage is, where we need to improve it and enhance it. With what's before you tonight, we'll be adding a total, or replacing and adding for a total of 14 cameras. And for a total not to exceed $27,548.79. We're going to be doing the installation ourselves, and that's about it. So if there's any other questions, happy to answer.
All right, thank you. Any question for Thomas? You can't get off that easy.
Where's the building located?
It's just north.
Just right across the street?
Yeah, right
Okay.
across the street.
That was my question for you.
All right.
I answered that.
Okay. No more questions, right?
All right, I move to forward the proposed update to the video system components for the evidence building to the July 2nd, 2024 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The matter passed 3-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item F, authorization to add a fixed term position. EJ.
Good evening, Chair Tran, members of the committee, members of council. Tonight before you, I am here to request authorization to add one 2-year fixed-term inspector position to our capital inspection program. We have been using a combination of full-time city employees, fixed terms such as this one, temporary employees, and consultant inspectors to oversee construction of both city projects as well as private development. Basically anything that's within the right-of-way. We have, over the last couple of years, regional construction, both inside and outside the city, has drastically picked up, and the number of available inspectors kind of region-wide has dropped, and we are at the point where we are having trouble even getting consultant firms to be able to come out and do inspections in a timely manner. So we have a temporary inspector today that we are looking to request to be converted to a 2-year fixed term position. It's a former WashDOT inspector that has proven themselves to us. And we are looking to keep them more or less for a couple of the larger projects that we have on the books right now, including the Coal Creek Culvert, some of the early work with City Center Access, and a couple of other significant projects along those lines. The funding for this is all out of the projects, so most of this position is grant funded. Whether it is in this format or in the format of a temporary inspector, the costs to the city are effectively the same. So we're just looking to bring that temporary position to be a term limited full-time position. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah. What is grade 38? Like, what is the ranking system there for that?
So the city uses a grade system that HR developed to try and rank all of the positions citywide, regardless of department or division. So grade 38 is somewhere in the middle. So it starts down at 15 or 14, and it goes up to 58, I believe is the top end.
Is the higher the number, the more cost, more higher position, or?
Yeah, it's a combination of those as well as responsibilities. So the numbers also tie into like authority of the position and what the position can enable for the city. And that includes things like what you heard from code enforcement tonight. They have more authority to bind the city than, say, one of the maintenance workers from my department, just because they're commissioned and they have code power. So that all plays into that conversation.
Interesting. All right, thank you.
Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. So a fixed-term position is not a full-time position?
It is a full-time 40-hour-a-week position. It is not a full-time position in that it's forever. So it fixed term is the duration, so it's a 2-year fixed term, but it is 40 hours a week.
And so have we done this before? Do we have other fixed-term employees?
We do. We have multiple right now.
And their position does not eventually become a full-time position, or it does?
Through this action, no, it does not. As part of the budget, there certainly could be a conversation to convert it to that. That's not what's proposed right now. Right now, it's proposed to be a 2-year fixed term, kind of in line with the capital projects that we have lined up for the next 2 years.
So when we see the budget, and every budget season, directors ask for more staff. You won't be asking for this then to be turned into a full-time position?
As I'm standing here right now, no. I mean, as we have additional projects come to light and kind of what the, council goals are as far as construction goes, that position may change. But as I stand right here now, I mean, if that were the goal, this is a position, like I said, that's funded largely by grants. There's no general fund impact to this. So if that were the goal, frankly, I would just be asking for a full-time position right now.
Okay, thank you.
Council President?
Yeah, I was just going to ask what happens after 2 years.
They're term limited, so it's a 2-year contract
Sure.
with them. So at that point,
And they know that up front.
they do, they sign that. So at that point, we can either come back to council and ask for it to be extended, or, yeah, I mean, it sunsets, in short.
So I have a question. So during this 2 years, are they considered to be consultant or actually city employee?
They're considered a city employee.
Okay. So they will receive the salary and benefits.
Correct, yeah, it's in the memo, and as Councilmember McDaniel pointed out, it's a grade 38 position, and then the benefits are in there as well.
I got it.
But yeah, no, they're classified as a city employee, it's just not a perpetual city employee.
Thank you. Lydia, you have questions?
Yeah, but if the job becomes permanent, would that person have to apply for it, or would they just be
They would.
placed in that position?
No, correct.
So it would
They-
be
they would have-
competitive.
Yes, they would have to apply.
So, thank you. So if it's difficult to get consultants, would this be something that's difficult to hire if someone is looking for a job and they know it's only 2 years, or, you know, I don't know that I would be looking for just a job that's for 2 years. So would you have a difficult time hiring for this also?
In general, I would say the answer to that's probably yes. So we have a temporary inspector right now that has already told us that they want this job. So we have someone specifically that we're trying to put into this job that's already working for the city. So to answer your question in a general sense, I would say yes. To answer your question in the sense of this very specific topic, I'm going to say no. We have someone that wants this position already.
So then we don't have to advertise this, as you've already chosen the person for the position?
It will get advertised internally. What I'm trying to say eloquently and probably not doing very well is that we have one person that's already expressed interest in it.
Oh, I understand what you're saying, but I just
yeah.
want to make sure we're doing everything the right way.
Absolutely. No, it'll get advertised internally.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I move to forward, make sure I got the right one. Okay. I move to forward option number 1 to the July 2nd, 2024 consent agenda for approval.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Matter passed 3-0.
Thank
Thank you, EJ. We are at item G, purchase of 2 used vehicle for the emergency management program. I don't see Kevin here.
Kevin's online.
Oh, sorry.
Can you see me now, John?
Yes. Hello.
Okay, and you can hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
I apologize. I tested positive for COVID, got a bit of a cough, so
Oh,
watch
no.
that sore throat, council member. But other than that, I'm fully vaxxed and boosted. I'm doing fine. I just don't want to get you guys sick. I'll be doing this remotely.
I will mention, I was tested and I came up negative.
Sorry to put you on the spot there, but I'm glad to hear that. Okay, I'm going to share my screen here for my presentation. All right. And here we go. All right, can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Good. This proposal is for the purchase of 2 used vehicles from Skagit County Emergency Management. One is a 30-foot Class C motorhome that they've converted into an incident command vehicle, and the other is a box ambulance they converted into an emergency communications vehicle. Skagit County is divesting of these, and rather than go to auction, they have offered them to the City of Federal Way for $3,500.
Pretty good deal.
Yeah, well, it is. The $3,500 comes also from our emergency management performance grant. So we have $17,000 set aside for communications improvement that will be refunded by FEMA through Washington State. So this would not cost the city anything. So in the event of a major earthquake, a volcanic eruption, or a cyber attack, we may lose our capability to talk on our normal methods and provide incident command and communications for that disaster. FEMA's incident command system requires us to have that situational awareness for incident commanders. And cell phones, internets, first responders, radio retrans systems may be affected or completely denied during a severe disaster or cyber attack. Right now, we do not have a mobile incident command post or mobile communications system. The incident command post you see every year at the Red, White, and Blues is on loan from Homeland Security. And in a widespread disaster, we would not be able to rely on that. And even in a localized disaster, that may not be available at the time. So having our own incident command post, as well as these mobile communications platforms, would severely add to our capabilities and reduce the risks during a disaster. And like I said, Skagit County is divesting of theirs, so rather than go to auction and take only a portion of what those vehicles are worth, they're willing to give it to the city of Federal Way for the cost of $3,500. So like I said, up on the right there is that incident command post. It's a Class C motorhome. It is a 2005 model with a Ford V10 motor. David Nyblum came with me up to Skagit County. We opened the hood and looked around the vehicles. They are in good and running order and have been well maintained. The motorhome, they took out the bed in the back and converted it to a communications and planning operations conference area. So up front, you have a table and chairs, and in the back, you have a same thing, table, chairs, desks. You can use 2 areas to conduct operations and operational planning on the scene of an emergency. It also comes with a communication suite. It has radios, transmitters, antennas already built into the vehicle, and that is coming with the purchase. Ambulance is a mobile communications platform without the incident command post. It has the same generator, antennas, radios, so that in the event of an emergency, the handheld radios we have, police radios that rely on repeaters, may be down, and the handheld radios that we use, like at Red, White, and Blues Festival and other events, they have a very limited range. So in order to reach to City Hall and talk to the directors and the EOC, that emergency command post could use those handheld radios, and you could conduct that command and control between City Hall and the site of the incident anywhere in Federal Way. Regional partners, King County, Pierce County, others could also use this vehicle. A lot of our sister cities do not have this, so having it for us, they might ask to use it as well. And as I said before, our performance grant will reimburse us for this cost, and the purchase of additional communication equipment can be factored in to our next year's EPMG and the year after. And our Federal Way Amateur Radio Club, if anybody went out and talked with them on Saturday, those guys are awesome, and they are eager to take a look in these things, see what we have now, and where we want to go on these things. Last thing I'll say is, this is kind of a beta test. These are used vehicles. The cost of maintenance will become high eventually on these. So with that $50,000 performance grant, what I would like to do is look in the future at what is it we really want. There's also a Homeland Security cyber grant that's available, and working with, council member, were you? I'm sorry, I didn't know when to talk over anybody. But like I was saying, this vehicle is a test bed. It will provide function for us now, and we can look at whether it's trailers or another mobile unit that we need in the future and what we need in there, whether that's Starlink satellite communications, Wi-Fi hub and boosters to provide Wi-Fi signal at the scene of an incident, cell phone boosters to provide additional cell coverage. We can use these to determine what the best communications and incident command suites are before we make a major purchase. We can use this $3,500 reimbursable purchase to test what we really want. Additional information, if approved, the maintenance will be provided by Public Works. Talking with EJ, I understand that once this the vehicle maintenance cost exceeds the cost of the vehicles, that we'll have to either fund it through emergency management funds or divest the vehicles ourselves. South King Fire has agreed to store the 30-foot mobile command post, and the communications truck, it will be parked in the north parking lot next to the trailers. Other communications, I've already said, additional stuff that we buy can be reimbursed through our future EMPG funds. And as I just said, the lessons learned from these vehicles will go towards a future program. So option one, recommend the purchase of the mobile incident command post and the communications vehicles, pending your questions.
Thank you, Kevin. Kevin, hey, Paul and I was talking about taking this trailer to Camden to testing out. What do you think?
Testing purposes only.
Yeah, testing only.
Purposes only. Well, they did take the bed out of it, so unfortunately, it does not have a bedroom anymore, but it still does have a shower, bathroom, and kitchen. So.
There we go.
All right. Well, thank you. Paul, you have a question?
Yeah, actually, it sounds like more of mine is clarification. So you verified the vehicles do run then?
Yes.
Okay, and do they come with the equipment, or I saw that there was a mention of adding maybe potential equipment. Do they actually come with some equipment already in them?
Yes. On this slide, if you look on the upper right, the antennas have already been purchased and installed. That's the ambulance with the antennas on top of it in the upper right. The motorhome also has the antennas. And on the right-hand side, let's see here. On the right-hand side, there is a stack of radios that are already in there. And as you can see, there's also the radio base stations hanging below the cabinetry in the rear bedroom of the motorhome. So they may take some of the radios out, but that's okay. We have some radios, and then the purchase, what they don't have, what they give us is free. It's better than anything we're gonna be trying to buy off the shelf starting from scratch. And then if they determine they need to keep some of the radios, we have some, and then purchasing them through those performance grants, the emergency management performance grants. And then also, like I said, I see this was a 2010 communications truck. We're in 2025, going to 2035 with this plan. And that's why I said, I think Starlink is gonna be the way to go in the future. A Yagi antenna that can connect to a cell phone antenna that can boost a cell signal, so that if we're in an area that has been, that we have lost cell phone coverage, we can provide internet coverage to our first responders and our public works, parks, community development folks, so that they will have internet, cell phone, and radio communications. That's why I say additional radio equipment. This is a radio truck. Communications today is not just radio, and I foresee using those performance grant funds to bring this up to 2030 standards.
My last question was, it sounds like you have places for storage. Are those long-term storages or short-term storage agreements?
Yes, since the Greater Federal Way Community Emergency Management Program includes the school district, fire department, Lake Haven, the fire department has agreed to store the big vehicle, the motorhome, and there is room right now in the north parking lot next to the 2 trailers I already have to park the communications ambulance.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Honda.
Thank you. So you have a small but very mighty department, so who's going to be driving these vehicles in the event we have to use them?
That's a good question. That is going to be probably either whoever's incident it is. So if it's a mass shooting, once it's been stopped, we look at what needs to go out there. It will be a city employee that is licensed on that type of vehicle, whether it's from Parks, Public Works, Police Department, or from our fire department friends.
Okay, so that'll be determined ahead of time, so
Well,
they're ready
yeah,
to go.
yeah, it'll be determined based on the incident
Right,
type.
right.
If it-
Right. And then, does IT have to do anything with these vehicles once we get them?
Initially, no. This is the comms equipment from the radio club. The IT department does not have to. I want them to work on these in the future as we look at setting up local area networks, cell phone boosters. That would definitely include the IT department. But I don't foresee that in this year. That would be 2025 and 26.
Okay, thank you, and I hope you feel better.
Thanks.
Mr. Dovey?
Yeah, I was just gonna comment, it looks like there's 9 antennas on there, so you're getting about $1,200 worth of installation already done. So
Yep.
you did a good job, and those radios are you're probably getting it all for free if you get that equipment.
Yeah, this is definitely something I would say too good to pass up.
Council President?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Kevin, I learned something interesting, which you probably already know, that if there's an earthquake and all the lines are down, that you can, the ham radio operators have their numbers, license numbers on the back of their vehicles, on their license plates. And so the police officers can pull over any ham radio operator and communicate that way through their ham radio. I thought that was pretty interesting. We have a really vibrant ham radio amateur club.
We do. They are a great team, and we're very lucky to have them. And I plan on utilizing them, and they are part of our emergency management program.
Very good.
Very good. I'll make a motion real quick. I move to forward, let me make sure I get that one. Okay, yeah. I move to forward option 1 to July 2nd, 2024, City Council consent agenda for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Matter pass 3-0. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin.
You're welcome.
Okay, we are now moving on to item H, Economic Development Monthly Update. Tanya, welcome.
Am I doing it wrong? Am I sharing my screen now? Good evening, Chair Tran, and the rest of the FedRAC Committee, Council President Kochmar, and the rest of Council. I am Tanya Carter, your Economic Development Director, here for the monthly Economic Development Update. We have 2 updates from Economic Development this month. We should have Ariana on the line to present our grant writer update. But just a little bit of background, the grant writer program is a pilot program for Federal Way this year for the entire city. So there are multiple departments that are involved in this grant program. And we have a grant writer that is looking for grants that are suitable to the projects that we have on our budget wait list. That list has been expanded a little bit to also start looking at some projects within the departments that may also be eligible for supplemental funding. So Ariana is here tonight. Sounds like she's on the line. And Ariana, if you want, I will go ahead and just advance to the summary sheet just to kind of keep the meeting flowing. I think we've all seen this flow chart before. This is just really to demonstrate that grants are a little bit more complicated than most people think. So the city has developed this entire grant process so that it's a flow chart that can be followed and understood, so that we can also help to understand what step of the process we are in. And after application, it also demonstrates after a grant is won, what happens in the next steps after that. So if Ariana is on the phone, we will just go ahead with the monthly update. And this is, again, the same spreadsheet that you have seen every month. The numbers are also in your staff report. One thing I just realized that we did forget is to put the dollar amounts on this chart, so we will endeavor to have that next month for you. So Ariana, if you are on the phone, go ahead and you can provide the update.
Thank you, Tanya. And thank you, council members. Thanks for having me. I am Ariana Garfolo with Collaborative Partners Initiative. And so, as Tanya mentioned, this is our update for the month. We have researched a total of 55 applications. We have submitted 5. I do have the dollar amounts of those at the bottom of the screen here. You'll see the total amount for all 5 applications submitted is $2,864,000, and I can just give you the breakdown of that verbally. So for parks, let's see. So there is about 2.7 million of grants for parks. And then for economic development, we had one for 147,000, one for 25,000, and then one for 64,000. Sorry to not total those. I'm not good with math on the fly, so I don't want to give you an inaccurate number. And then the one grant that is in process for the courts is at $35,000. Let's see here. So yes, those are the applications that have been submitted and in progress. As I mentioned, the one for courts for 35,000. And then the other categories are applications declined. There have been 5 of those. Those were grants that we located and pushed to the relevant department, and then the department declined to pursue, typically for reasons of perhaps not having enough staffing or not being able to comply with the administrative requirements on the back end of the grant. There's 15 grants we've researched that have been saved for later, so that means those have been identified as good fits for a project on the wait list, but the timeline has passed or didn't line up, so we're tracking those for the next application cycle. And then there were 29 grants that we have researched and then deemed that they were not applicable for the city. Perhaps the city was not an eligible applicant type or other such reasons that they might not be applicable. So I think we can go to the next slide. So for this slide, we are going to present these hours cumulatively. So these are the, last month when I presented, we had the total of all the hours. So what you're seeing now is the numbers from last month with the new numbers from this past month added on, so that these are cumulative totals showing how much work we've done so far since we've been working with economic development. So our total hours of work were at 213 and a quarter, and you can see the breakdown for that. So the actual writing, creation of grant applications and tracking and follow-up on those applications, 54 and a half hours, meetings, calls, and emails with city staff, such as Tanya Carter or anyone else, perhaps some folks in parks or other people that we may be working with on different grants. That's a total of 56 hours for creating and maintaining deliverables. Those deliverables include things such as that flow chart that Tanya showed at the beginning of this presentation. They also include the grant library, which is the master spreadsheet, if you will, of all of the grant opportunities that we have identified that we mentioned earlier. So those are 19 and a quarter hours that we've spent on those deliverables so far. And then the last category, which is the largest one, is the grant research. So that is, actually looking into grants, seeing if they're applicable, eligible, and this includes, the grants that we did pursue and also the ones that were not eligible. So we are at 83 and a half hours for that. So thank you so much. I'm happy to take any questions if you have them.
One thing I did want to point out before questions, as Ariana mentioned, we have almost $3 million in grants that we have worked on. And so proportionate to what the cost is of having these grant writing services, I think it's pretty proportional. So it's less than $100,000 for the grant writing services for the year. And they've already been able to identify almost $3 million in grants for us.
Can you go back 2 slides? And is this a running total, or is that for 1 month, last month only?
Correct, running total, yeah.
Total,
So it'll be cumulative, yeah.
Okay, so both the reports are going to be accumulated?
Correct,
Okay.
yeah.
That was my only question.
Yeah, sure. And also, I think that Ariana did mention the Saved for Later. Those are all grants that we will apply for, but it's just that it's like an annual rolling grant that is only available in April, and we missed it in April, so we'll apply for it next year. So there are more grants here that have been identified.
Lydia?
Yeah, so same slide. So we have out of applications submitted total of 2.8 million. There's 6 applications, but when we look up here, there's also applications that were declined. So the 284 is submitted, but not necessarily what we got, right?
They're in various stages. So for example, the economic development grants, there's one that we will be getting and another one that we're presenting in September because we have to present it to a board for them to make the final decision. So it's various stages in the process.
So the 2.8 does not include the applications that were declined, in other words?
That is correct, yes. So the ones that were declined, as Ariana mentioned, for various reasons, but some of the reasons were that it was a grant that may have looked good on the surface, and then when it was passed on to the whichever department, there was some reason that they were deciding to not pursue the grant.
So we declined those.
Ariana, could you clarify? I believe all 5 were declined from our departments. Is that correct?
That's correct. So I think that we should change the language on this, and I apologize for the confusion. I think that rather than applications declined, this line should actually say grants declined, or maybe we can think about a different wording that makes it more clear, because yes, so these are grants that we found and sent to parks or police or whatever department it was, and for whatever reason they said we don't want to go after this. So the application was never actually submitted, it was just declined internally. So I apologize for that confusion. We'll clarify that language for the next presentation.
Great.
Maybe
So-
not pursued
Passed
might
on.
be a.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, something along those lines, not pursued, yeah.
But the 6 total on the bottom are the 5 plus 1?
Correct.
Is that a good assumption?
Yes,
Okay,
thank
thank
you.
you.
Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. So there are some of our departments that declined to apply for grants then because of staffing or because they didn't think it was something they qualified for, but yet it was recommended that they apply for these grants from your.
So in general, the reasons why, number one, would be that the requirements on the back end were too cumbersome. So essentially, requiring like a part-time employee to manage the back end requirements. So that's also something that we want to bring to light, is that even if there's a grant that we qualify for, if it takes, an additional salary more or less to manage the grant, then that's also, needs to be taken into consideration. For example, if it is, a $5 million grant, but it would take a PTE, part-time to administer it, that would be a good investment. But if the grant was only for like $100,000 and it would take a PTE to manage that grant, then that would be something maybe that the department would want to consider. Then there might be cases where there are some grants where you are kind of excluded from future grants if you apply for certain grants. So that tends to happen a lot of time at the federal level. So that could have been a reason, but there are various reasons why a department may not be able to accept pursuing it.
So when we went into this contract, I thought that there would be help in applying for the grants, actual work done.
There is. So it's
Okay.
here. So if you look at the grant applications and tracking, so there is a substantial amount of work that does go into the application. So essentially 100 hours, so about half, if not a little bit more, of the total hours are in applying for. So that means formulating the wording, getting all the data, doing the research on what needs to be applied, talking to the grantor. That also takes a lot of time because the grants are very technical, and so there are, for example, technical assistance webinars. One that we attended 2 weeks ago where it was explained, and unfortunately this is what we're finding happens. There were kind of new requirements that were put on the awardees after the grants were awarded, and so that also requires a lot of support. So this is not something that could be done currently under the staffing conditions that we have.
Okay, thanks.
Can you go back to that other chart? So this is you said it's a rolling, this is what they've done so far this year or in the.
Correct, so in 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think what would be great is if you were able to have this, but a column, I mean, since you're coming and giving us a report every month, if you could have a column showing what is new in the previous month.
Sure. Yeah, we
So
can
we
certainly do
can
that.
see what's ongoing.
Yeah. And so I think, yes, absolutely, we can do that, and we can start that moving forward. Ariana, did you make a note of that, or should we connect offline?
Yeah, I made a note of that.
Okay,
Thank you.
super.
Any more questions for Tanya? Oh, great. Thank you for the update.
Thank you for all the questions. Really appreciate it.
Thank
Yep.
you.
You have the next item too, right?
I'm with you for another couple minutes. So Tanya Carter, your Economic Development Director. I'm here to present another update for FEDRAC this evening. It is the Lodging Tax Committee, their TEG, which is the Tourism Enhancement Grant applicant, and this is what was deliberated at our last Lodging Tax Committee, at our last Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, of which Chair or Councilmember Asefa Dawson is the chair. So all of this information is in your packet. I won't belabor the point too much unless anyone has any questions, but the policy question this evening for FEDRAC is, should City Council approve, actually, it probably should say FEDRAC. Should FEDRAC approve LTAC's recommendations for the 2024 enhancement grant? So essentially approve it to move forward to consent on the council agenda. And then the background, again, this is just a high-level summary. The Pacific Northwest Aerospace Alliance is an alliance here in the Pacific Northwest that represents various organizations in aerospace. And essentially, they meet on regular basis. They will be meeting this year at the Performing Arts and Event Center. And so they have multiple events, and this particular event in the past before COVID was attracting up to about 500 people. As we know now since COVID, the numbers for these types of larger conferences have decreased, in many cases by a third or up to half. So this is still a good attendance. They project over 100 attendees, and there's a breakdown here of projected overnight stays and participants where they may be coming from, and this is also seen from their registrations. So it is a fairly accurate estimate. And the request was for $6,000. The LTAC approved it for $2,500 based on the low number of heads and beds. So there are heads and beds, but just not as many as would be hoped for a request for $6,000. And so the options to consider is option one, forward the proposed TEG grant recommendation to the consent agenda for approval, or do not forward the proposed tourism enhancement grant recommendation and provide direction to staff.
Great, thank you. Paul, you have a question?
My question is, heads and beds, what is our ratio we're looking for on these grants usually? Because I know we've done a couple of these, and we do have a head and bed. Do we have a number or any kind of metrics that we use of like?
No, there's, it's kind of like airline tickets where the hotel rates are changing, daily, and they also change based on where you're booking it from. If it's from a, what's called like an OTA, online travel agent, like Expedia, if you have a block of rooms for a conference. So there isn't any kind of formula you can use. And
No, let me rephrase that. When we give out money, like you had mentioned, they were looking for 6, but because they only had X amount of heads in the beds they provided, do we have a metrics that says at 6,000, we would have expected 100 heads, or?
No, it's just a feeling over time. Most of the hotels who are the providers of the funding and the venues that are the recipients of the funding who are on the Lodging Tax Committee, they have been doing this for many, many years. And so it's a general feeling, based on multiple factors. So it's everything from heads and beds, how long has the event been around, what's the kind of trajectory of the event in the future, will it kind of increase, will it bring more tourism dollars to the city? So there's a number of factors that come into it when they make their consideration.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So this event is occurring in August, so 2 months from now. And it says that they are reaching out to the hotels to get a block of rooms.
As far as I know, they have done so. I haven't spoken to the PNAA in a couple weeks, but as far as I know, after we had this discussion, they were reaching out, and they'd already had initial conversations with them.
So let's say we gave money out to this group and they actually only put 20 people in a hotel. then if they come back in a year and ask us for the same amount of money, what would the response be?
Unfortunately, I'm not on the committee, so it would be unfair for me to
Well,
make
you
a
staff the
judgment.
committee, so I'm sure you give them some advice.
But it wouldn't be my decision, so I'd
I
be
understand
trying to
that.
make a decision for 6 people that are not here. And, the conditions could change. They also could, put a different marketing program together. There also could be, other support from other organizations. So there's too many factors, and I'm unfortunately not the deciding person on that, so.
So as a staff person who staffs the committee, at the end of this, will you find out how many rooms were actually used?
There is an after-event report that all of the grant recipients do fill out, and so that usually provides those numbers for it because we have to provide that to the state.
Correct.
So we do have to do an after-event report that is sent up to the state for audit.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, a comment I might make is we always use the term heads and beds, and the amount of percent we actually get from the room tax is very, very small, but there's a lot of rooms. So I think we might be thinking in terms of economic development, how many restaurants get used, they're in the bed, do they buy a shaver? I mean, if we were only thinking about heads and beds, we wouldn't do this, because the money coming in is, I mean, we would still do it, but the money doesn't offset the cost of the room or even come close. This is more of a marketing fund and get people to stay in Federal Way, so.
Correct. And
I just say that we say heads and beds, it's easy to say, but it doesn't reflect the economic flow to the city when 200 people come and stay at the PAC and do something.
I appreciate that, and I will take that to heart and also include more information as it relates to that in future, because that is exactly what the point is not just the hotels, but also the economic benefit of being able to advertise, kind of getting Federal Way on the map is the first. The second is coming to Federal Way as a business tourist, which is what we have a very large percentage of. But then, of course, maybe enjoying the amenities that are here and coming back with your family, and that's something that you can't really quantify. And then the hotels, many times with these conferences, if they have a block of rooms, they do get things from restaurants, venues, retailers to promote those those venues so that the participants can partake in those and are aware of them when they're here. So I appreciate that, and I will endeavor to do a better job of highlighting that.
Plus
Can I
they're
respond
renting
to
the
that?
PAC.
I took a class at AWC last week on lodging tax, and MRSC was teaching it, and it very much is heads and beds. That's what the state's looking for when they do audits, and so we still have to be very focused on that.
That is correct. So that is what the metric that they do use, but it is the hotels that actually, have the tax imposed on them. And so the hotels have to make up half of the committee. So if the hotels feel that it's beneficial to, their business, then that's kind of a litmus test as well to understand, what the impact of that particular event would be.
I mean, I would love to see, how, like, if a family came in with a person who's attending the conference, exactly what they do if they stay here, or if they go into Seattle or Tacoma, because we have things here in Federal Way, but do we let them know? Do we not let them know about Wild Waves or the Bonds, the Rhodey Gardens, or, there are things to do that you can only do here in Federal Way, but we need to let them know. That has to be advertised to them, that those things are here.
I appreciate that, and we actually have a very good working relationship with all of the hotels. So that is something that we talk to them on a consistent basis. We also are working on what is called familiarization tours, and a FAM tour for short is basically an outing where staff from the various hotels will go to venues so that they can experience the venue and be able to speak intelligently about that venue when the businesses, when the tourists or travelers are coming to the hotels. So that is a great benefit to us, as well as Council was very generous and approved the visitfederalway.org upgrade to the website. So that is also now what hotels use, is QR codes that can send travelers directly to the website to understand what there is available in Federal Way. So we have multiple ways that we do work with both the events, marketing, and the hotels to make sure that that gets out. So I appreciate the question.
Mr. Walsh.
Yeah, my question, with the grant like this is an event that's already booked, it's going to happen. And so is giving them the grant, is that just providing an incentive for them to come back again next year? Because they're already coming here this year. So, I mean, what's,
Yeah, I can't unfortunately speak for every event, and I'm not quite sure, here for them, but from our side, from the city side, what we would like to do, it's kind of like when a developer comes and, we have certain incentives that might incent, like the new market tax credits or the MFTEs, multifamily tax exemption. Those are all incentives, for someone to choose doing an event or developing here rather than somewhere else. So it is a very valuable tool. Unfortunately, not very many events avail of it. I've very diligently for many years really tried to push more folks to, to try to build their programs in a way that we can support them with these funds. So absolutely encourage council, whenever you have anyone that even remotely might think that they have an event, please talk to Chair Sefadossan of the LTAC committee or myself, and we would be more than happy. That is one of the things that staff does offer, is to help work through the application with the applicant, so that we can help identify, if they may not qualify, what they would need to do to be able to qualify in that round, and if it wouldn't work in that round, what would they need to do to qualify in, subsequent rounds. So we do offer that as well, to make sure that they present their best foot forward.
but I guess what I'm saying is that with those other tax incentives with the developers know in advance that they're going to have that incentive if they develop. With this, I mean, this organization is already booked. They're already having it here. They didn't bring it here because of that grant. It's an after the fact
Yeah.
thing. So I guess what I'm asking is to just kind of incentivize them for the following year, or what's, do you understand what I'm?
Yeah, it helps defray costs. I mean, I can't presume to know what they would, what their motivation would be, but the point of the grant is to help defray costs, to make it more executable. So it may be that, I'm completely making this up, but it could be that they kind of like scrape their pennies together from the piggy bank to make that, the event happen, and being able to defray some of the costs, kind of helps offset that to make it more manageable for them. What we did hear from this, and I think Chair Sefadossan could also explain from the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, that they said that they would just simply send less staff. So if they didn't have the funding in full, then they would send less staff, and they would, maybe not have this type of, menu item, but maybe that type of menu item. So they would cut their cost overall.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Lydia?
Yeah, I do appreciate what Councilmember Dovey said, and Susan, I'm sorry, I didn't see that on the agenda, but I would have attended the workshop that you just mentioned. But I do agree with what you said. First of all, we don't have that many hotels in Federal Way anyway, and so even if, so people probably would go to other cities, but the economic, what we bring in other ways, I think is very important. And then they get to know Federal Way, and hopefully the following year, more people would stay here in Federal Way. In terms of what, you just answered the question I was going to answer in terms of what they were going to do. But also the funds are there for, this is what it's there for. And so since we can't use it for anything else, I think encouraging programs like this to apply for the grant and utilize that, I think would be the best way to do it. Otherwise, just, we can't use it for anything else. So that's another thing I just wanted to bring up. So thank you.
Lydia, it was a MRSC workshop, and we spent like 25 minutes talking about lodging tax. Yeah, it was, yeah. So it wasn't titled, just so you know that you didn't miss any, seeing it.
Real quick, does the PAC send out this kind of information to everybody who signs up for an event at our Performing Arts Center?
No, that's managed by Oakview Group, so they are kind of a separate entity. I mean, it's certainly something that we can talk to them about.
I would imagine
They
it should
probably
be.
should.
Yeah.
As an incentive for someone to come to the PAC
Add it
and
on
do
the
something.
website, because that's an incentive, like you said, add it to the website and then also send it out. So yeah,
Sure,
like, if we
that's
don't
a
do
great,
that.
yeah,
I
it's a
would definitely
great
reach
point.
out.
I will speak with the general manager over at the PAC and see how we could figure that out. thank you for that comment.
And Dumas Bay also.
I'm sorry?
And Dumas Bay also. 'cause
Yes,
we have
I have
overnight stays there.
spoken a couple times to them, but I will make it more formal and structured based on that comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
I move to forward the proposed tourism enhancement grant application recommendation 2024 to July 2nd, 2024 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Matter pass 3-0. Thank you, Tanya. Okay, we are moving down to item J, AP voucher 5/17/2024 to 6/17/2024, and payroll voucher from 5/01/24 to 5/31/24. Chase.
And I know it says Chase's name on here, but I'm going to be running I'm going to bring us home on the PowerPoint. Chase is joining me, so we will tag team any questions you can possibly have. We put our heads together to try to make this one interesting this month, and we couldn't do it. The AP voucher total is typical of many months, whereas the payroll vouchers is normal. We couldn't find anything particularly noteworthy, interesting out of, I mean, we didn't find much.
Nothing out of the ordinary. So, and we sent an email to you, Council Member Honda, and the other council members on the questions that you had shortly before the meeting.
Yes, thank you, I appreciate it.
And I apologize, we had a back-to-back, one of the busiest days we've ever had, and I know that we only sent the answers to the questions an hour before this meeting time, when some of you may have been traveling. So this month only, we'll extend that question period. If you have any further questions, we promise to get back to you and answer them.
I only sent them to you last night at midnight, so you only had a short time anyway. So, thank you, though.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
I read it before the meeting, like 5 minutes before the meeting, so we all good.
Yeah, and we try to point out which page numbers you might look at for things that are over $100,000. And so we look at those, we look for highlights, and this month there just weren't a whole lot of highlights. Thank you for that. With that, I invite your approval and any further questions.
Well, it looks like we don't have any question for Mr. Groom.
I move to forward the vouchers to the July 2nd, 2024 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Better pass 3-0. You have the next one, too.
I do, and this one, I've got some interesting things to discuss. Now, normally the whole purpose of the monthly financial report is to report back to you, you've adopted a budget, my goodness, we're into month 5 now in the current fiscal year, and the budget was adopted at the beginning of the biennium. So we always want to report how the expenditures are doing, how the revenues are doing, and we want to disclose our investments. And for the first 5 months of this year, the revenues are favorable, but on 23.7 million, that 561,000 is pretty slim. So we're gonna dissect this a little bit. The expenditures also are favorable, also a very slim margin, and part of this is due to the front loading of a lot of expenses in January. If we look at sales tax revenue, we are 3% unfavorable to budget, and we are 5% behind the same 4 months of last year. We get this one on a 2-month lag. And we know that we're experiencing about a 4% inflation factor. Yeah, so that meant, I talked to the finance director of CTEC, and they are 4% up from last year. But that's just inflation, so that means that their volume is the same. Well, they've got an airport, and so that means travel is steady. So this is one of the things we're looking at, and I'll go through 4 of these, and then we'll kind of look at them, at what we're doing about it. Our permit fees, it's good news and bad news here. The good news is we're favorable to budget, and the bad news is we're quite a bit under prior year. Well, that has to do with the fact that last year we had some really significant permits, so we could be dealing with some variability of timing, which months of the year we see large projects. So the good news is we're favorable to budget, but, you know, we look at the same time period last year, and we're under what we were doing. So we want to look at our city and say, what's going on? What do we know about our city? What do we think is going on? Now, property tax revenue, we're within 1% of budget, we're within 1% of prior year. One of them's unfavorable and one's over. But this one gives me absolutely no concern, because when we do a tax levy, we know with a high degree of certainty that at the end of the year, we're going to end up collecting the levy within a very small percent. Now, real estate excise tax, this is a separate, this isn't our general fund. This funds specifically capital projects and debt pertaining to the capital projects in parks and streets. We've been watching this for some time. That little red line down there, if you have a straight edge, you can make an argument that it's taken an upturn. Not much, but it's a glimmer of hope. Now, mortgage rates have not changed. So the fact that it's taken an upturn is encouraging, but it's not because we've seen interest rates drop. And the last economic indicator we look at, now this is on a much smaller scale. This isn't 20 million, 12 million, or 5 million. This is we're only looking for about 300,000. And this one, it's a little bit unfavorable to budget. It's a little bit over prior. Another good news, bad news, but the variance is very small dollars, $3,000, $4,000. So I just showed you that compared to prior year, if you look at sales tax, permit fees, property tax, and investment revenue, which I haven't shown you yet, but that'll be in the investment section, but still those first four, those are the ones that fund our general fund. I showed this to management team. I sent this out and I've shared this with the mayor and with city administrator. Compared to prior year, sales tax and permit fees, that's 1.2 million that's negative. And then we've got, almost 200,000 for investment revenue that makes it up. This is $1 million we're down to our general fund compared to prior year. And then REIT is its own problem. But so if we have $1 million drop from prior year, that's going to color how we're watching and managing our expenses this year. It's also going to color how we forecast our revenue going forward into the next biennium. Now, let me compare to budget. If we look at sales tax and permit fees, compared to budget, we're only under budget by about 400,000. And then we've got 360 making it up on investments. So compared to budget, we only have a $100,000 problem. That's 1/10. That's much different. Go ahead.
Can I just jump in?
You please do.
But the problem is when REIT is down 815 and you're under budget, that means we're not doing projects that we said we were going to do. So it's really not, the money's not the same. We're really upside down at least $1.5 million and maybe $2 million.
Yes, and I will acknowledge.
And so I don't know, you can't sugarcoat that at all. We got
Right.
a major thing we got to be looking at.
Absolutely true.
Okay, I just wanted to,
The management response to REIT being down means deferring projects. You're exactly right. We're not doing them. We're delaying them. We're deferring them. That's how we.
or probably delaying them a long time. I mean,
Bumping them into the next year is, yeah.
or longer.
And this is EJ's projects, right? It's not so much parks. This is impacting our public works. The top four I grouped together because that's what's funding our general fund. That's our, police, parks, code enforcement, all that.
But Steve, when we delay projects that, because of REIT and other funding, sales tax and things that are down, that's not just for next year, it's for multiple years, because you have projects that should be done this year, they hopefully will be done next year, and then you have
Yes.
to push things out.
There's a domino effect.
So there must be some plan that staff is working on as to how to overcome this and
Right.
get back on track, correct?
Right. And when we look at our city, we look first off at the property values, and we say, do we believe that the property values are stable? They've gone up 12%, 19% in prior years. This year, they came down 4%. I still call that stable. And so we think that there's an economic cycle. So we think we're in a down cycle right now. Do we think there'll be an up, and will we catch up? That's a value judgment we make, and we'll be making it in our budget. Will we be able to catch up? Will REIT come in much more favorably because what we do is we budget cautiously. We budget cautiously, and then we manage the expenses to budget, hopefully creating savings. If every department manages to budget, then that will create at least a little bit of savings. When we get requests, and I have a long budget wait list, I capture them, and we don't greenlight them unless we have revenue and savings. And the way that we have been able to overcome surprises, the things like the community center, the slide and the locker room, we've been able to overcome those, and then jail cost. Jail cost has been paid for partially by the salary savings in PD, and then sometimes we've been having favorable revenue, and that's how we've been overcoming the savings. What we haven't really been really great at is building reserves, and we've talked about that. When we have catastrophes or we have serious problems, we want to make sure that we have reserves. And then if we have them, we can use them, but then what does that do? That handicaps the next 3 years to repay them. So we want to be in the habit of adding to our reserves in our budget if we can, and that's been terribly difficult. So we are looking at these every month. I bring them to you every month. We can't sugarcoat reality. This is actual dollars in the bank. We reconcile our bank account, and we have what we have, and we can't create money that isn't there.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So, last month I brought this up too. When we have staff positions that are empty, and we use the savings from those salaries for the budget.
I found this on the web.
Oops, nope, I don't know why you found anything on the web. Do you build a budget? So you're building the budget for the next 2 years right now. How do you build a budget with empty positions? And I don't know how many positions are empty right now in the
Right.
city. Knowing that really those should be filled, plus there are new positions that the mayor has promised. It seems to me it would be rather complicated and a difficult thing to do if our budget is favorable now because of empty positions. So how do you do that?
It is complicated, but we absolutely budget 100% of the police positions. We expect them to be filled, we want them to be filled. Now, they're incurring overtime, so the overtime kind of balances out. We budget the known positions, the approved positions, you approve all of the positions in the adopted budget, and we budget them 100%. And then when we have vacancies and we have overtime that's offset, we've also used part of it for jail costs. So there's a fair amount of juggling. But the answer is, we budget all the positions at 100% because we expect them to be filled.
Thank you.
Sure, great question. Moving ahead to the investment activity, there's not much interesting here. We continue to be favorable to budget. Well, that is interesting. We're both favorable to budget and we're over prior year. We expect rates to drop, and they haven't. So we continue to be experiencing better than budget and better than prior year. Although for the next 2 years, when is the Federal Reserve going to drop their rates? It's a good question. In the current month, we had 2 maturities, and we made three purchases. We gained a little ground. What you can see here, though, is we are locking in 4.5% rates for 5 years. So should rates go down, this is what we've been doing every single month. So we've got $66 million locked in over a 5-year ladder. Our total cash continues to be very stable. It's still 110. We have 10 million of that is still unspent ARPA. So we know that we have to leave that amount at least in liquidity. And so we look for $20 million, but we know that $10 million of dollars is going to be spent in ARPA. So that's why we're showing that we've got 32 million in the state treasurer's investment pool, where our absolute rock bottom minimum is $20 million. I wanted to add just a little bit of information on what the finance department is doing. You all have been keeping us busy. Well, okay, it's not you. But what we've been doing behind the scenes, the 2023 audit, we provided our preliminary audited financials, gave it a pretty cover picture of the Performing Arts Center. We delivered that to them on May 1st. And that is supposed to have been, they were planning to be done by June 30th. Now they are reviewing it, and they need another month. We're going to ask GFOA for an extension, but we expect that to be done at the end of July. So that's been taking up, the time it always takes. Our financial system, we use a an automated system like many cities. We use Tyler's Eden, and they put us on notice that it's going to be no longer supported in 2027, so we have been working with IT, and we've been talking to a lot of cities. I was even talking to cities in Florida when I went to a finance conference. There's a lot of cities across America, not just here in Washington. Some cities like Kennewick have already replaced theirs. They wanted to be early. But we hired a consultant working with Thomas. They've been talking to all the departments in the whole city, asking them what currently works well, what doesn't work well, what do you need that we don't have, what have you been hearing that other cities use. So we're trying to make sure that when we put out an RFP, we have a scope of work that fits our users, because again, finance is a support department. Now, why do we need to absolutely replace it by 2027? We can't use this system after they no longer support it because it's payroll. And when you're sending transactions to the bank, when you're doing filings with the IRS, and you have little new things pop up, you need support. So we know that we have to transition. So that's one of our projects. We have been working behind the scenes on the 25-26 budget. We are still focused on public meetings in September. We've been meeting with departments and looking at how they're doing this year and how that colors how next year would look, the next 2 years. We have a credit rating coming up in July. Our current credit rating is AA2. I am hopeful that we can move that up maybe a tick. I don't know. We will see. And the reason we have to do the credit rating is, of course, because we're doing the debt issue in August. So we've been working with our bond counsel, and you all are familiar with that. We came to you for a bond ordinance. In addition to that, we do what we always do, our monthly close of the books, do our financial report for you, do accounts payable and payroll. But I've got one other thing that's really interesting, and I'm going to brag about us, and I hope that gives you something to brag about this city, and that is Chase and I have had the opportunity to go out and get amongst our peers. Our first opportunity was in Chelan. We went to the Washington Public Treasurers Association Conference, and we did a conference session, Chase and I, teaching about investments for small cities, small governments that don't know how to get started. I went to Orlando, Florida, to the biggest conference I've ever been to. The main session was 4,000 people. And it was, again, on the same exact topic. And the reason I bring this up is because it's becoming something that we're kind of known for here. And then there's an organization here regionally, Puget Sound Finance Officers Association. They used to meet over at Emerald Downs. The price got a little pricey over there. They were going to start going to remote, and so I asked if we could use this very chamber. So once a month, I think for about 4 months now, we have had other cities. We bring in lunch. Touch brings in catering that is an adventure. You never know what we're going to get, and it's really been interesting. And then at their June meeting, Chase and I taught exactly the same thing, how we are doing investments. We're being very open and transparent, and that makes us accountable. So that if anybody wants to question us or challenge us, and by the way, right there, that is Chase Donnelly in this chamber teaching, and that's a picture of a yield curve, and he's teaching other cities. And you would ask, which other cities have been attending? And so I just grabbed a couple slides that we put out on LinkedIn. These are the cities whose finance departments have been coming here to our city council chambers. And my joy here is that it gives the illusion that City of Federal Way is the place to come for training. And we're having presentations on best practices in Excel or economics, or we'll do audit. And I think we had the state auditor spoke when it was at Emerald Downs, right? Yeah. So we're just presenting monthly on best practices in finance, and they're coming here. And I just thought I would share that with you to brag about us. You should know about it. Even though revenue is down, we're still working at our reputation. That's my report. I would ask you for your approval and invite any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Paul?
Couple questions. First one, IT, with the new accounting software that's coming in, will you guys be, I don't know if you can answer this question, will you guys be integrating it with the current one, or will we have two standalone systems?
It's going to be migrating, and the system is going to have to integrate with several systems in the city, for example, permitting.
Yeah, we have custom coding, I know, on some of those
Yeah.
projects, so.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We would be able to do a parallel payroll run, for example, when it comes, after we've migrated the data and tested the data, we would run a payroll, and everything should total the same. Now, we're only going to be able to transmit one to the bank, but we can do the testing in parallel, and we'll be doing that.
All right. My second question is kind of on the investment side of things. We've, and I've heard other council members mention before, we have 100 million sitting in our accounts. Now, most of that money, I'm assuming not all, but most of it has already been pre-assigned to projects and stuff like that, correct?
A lot of it is restricted money for the capital fund or fleet replacement. Yes, and while it's sitting there, that's what we're investing.
Gotcha. So I have questions on, like, when we were talking about the new maintenance facility, one of the comments that was brought up by Councilmember Dovey was using the swim money up front. And when looking at that, that actually does save quite a bit of money on the long-term payment for it. Is there other projects like that where that money is making that high 4, maybe 5%, but our loan that we're going to be taking out for that bond is going to be around that 5? Is there any other projects that we can utilize that money now?
The maintenance facility is going to be paid for by SWIM and REIT and general fund. And so the other restricted funds can't be used for that project. And so general fund is the one that we really try to protect, and we want it, because it can be used for anything. So we try to minimize that one, which is a long way to say, not really, no, there isn't.
But from your estimates on this one, SWIM could be used on that particular?
Yes.
That's a $10 million savings. in the
It
long
absolutely could. Our worry is that REIT is coming in so low that we may need to use SWIM for payments if REIT can't. That's why we're leaving that flexibility.
run. $10 million is still $10 million.
Yep,
All
yep,
right.
agree.
All right, that's all I have for right now. Thank you.
I see no other questions for Steve.
All right. I move to forward the May 2024 monthly financial report to the July 2nd, 2024 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, matter pass 3-0. And I have no other agenda items. Our next meeting is going to be July 23, 2024, at 5 p.m. in this room. And I will be here in the next few months, so.
Start looking forward to it now.
No, I can't go on vacation anymore, so I'm here.
Special vacation.
You're going on permanent vacation.
Oh, yeah, you're retirement currently.
Well, that's the different one. Yeah. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, staff, for being here. Really appreciate it. Have a good night.